The gymnasium echoed with the sharp crack of a microphone feedback. But it was nothing compared to the shatter of Jake Harlan's world, when his ex-wife's voice sliced through the PDA meeting like a knife through butter. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we adjourn, I have something to say about my husband. No, ex-husband, who's been lying to all of us for years. He's gay." The room froze, a sea of soccer moms and dads turning like synchronized swimmers toward Jake, who stood at the back clutching a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee, his son's forgotten lunchbox dangling from his free hand. In that instant, the coffee burned his tongue as he swallowed a gasp, the liquid searing down like molten regret, while across the folding tables, his 10-year-old son, Ethan, blinked up from his seat beside his mother, confusion etching lines on his freckled face that Jake had kissed goodnight 1,000 times. The betrayal hit harder than the whispers that would follow. His ex, Sarah, eyes gleaming with the righteousness of a scorned crusader, had just detonated the bomb she'd been wiring for months. All because Jake had dared to whisper his truth to a therapist. A secret she'd eavesdropped on and weaponized in the name of protecting their boy. As the murmurs swelled into a roar, Jake's knees buckled. Not from shame but from the raw terror of Ethan's wide eyes locking onto his. Those eyes that mirrored his own hazel depths, now clouded with a question no father should face. "Daddy, is it true?" And in that gaze, Jake saw not just the end of his carefully constructed facade, but the unraveling of the only pure love he'd ever known, the kind that didn't demand closets or compromises. Jake Harlan stumbled out of Willow Creek High's gymnasium into the crisp October evening, the autumn leaves crunching under his boots like brittle bones. The small town of Willow Creek, tucked in the rolling hills of upstate New York, had always felt like a postcard, red brick Victorian homes lining maple-shaded streets, the Hudson River murmuring secrets just beyond the tree line. But tonight, it was a cage, the stars above mocking him with their indifferent sparkle as he fumbled for his truck keys. His heart hammered against his ribs, each beat a reminder of Sarah's words echoing in his skull. He's gay. Not a question, not a rumor. A declaration, hurled like a Molotov cocktail into the heart of his double life. He'd built this existence brick by brick after the divorce 2 years ago. Sarah had gotten the house on Elm Street with its wraparound porch and the golden retriever named Max, who still greeted him with sloppy kisses on weekends. Jake had taken the apartment above the auto shop he owned, Harlan's Repair, a grease-stained sanctuary where he could lose himself in the guts of engines, coaxing V8s back to life while burying his own stalled desires. And Ethan, their miracle boy, shuttled between them like a fragile package, his laughter the glue holding Jake's fractured world together. But Sarah? She'd always been the storm cloud on the horizon, her resentment brewing since the day Jake confessed in therapy that his heart had never truly been hers. It started innocently enough, or so he'd told himself. 20 years ago, in the glow of a college bonfire at SUNY New Paltz, Jake had met Sarah. Fiery, ambitious, with auburn curls and a laugh that could light up a blackout. He was 20, broad-shouldered from summers baling hay on his family's farm upstate, and straight as the arrow his dad swore by, or at least that's what he believed. Their wedding was a whirlwind of wildflowers and whiskey toasts, the kind of small-town Americana dream that made front-page news in the local Gazette. Ethan came along a year later, a squalling bundle of joy that sealed the deal. But beneath the surface, Jake felt the pull. A quiet ache when he'd linger too long watching the quarterback at the community league games, or the way his pulse quickened passing the tattooed mechanic from the next town over at auto parts suppliers. He'd shoved it down, deep into the engine block of his denial, telling himself it was a phase, a glitch in the system. Therapy was supposed to fix it. 6 months of sessions in a dingy office in Poughkeepsie, where Dr. Ellis, a soft-spoken woman with wire-rimmed glasses, coaxed out the truth. I think I'm gay," he'd finally whispered one rainy Tuesday, the words tasting like rust on his tongue. Sarah had found out by accident, or so she claimed, picking up the phone during a call he'd thought was private. Instead of compassion, she'd met it with fury, filing for divorce with citations of irreconcilable differences that masked her deeper wound. Not just betrayal, but obsolescence. The outing tonight? That was her checkmate. Jake slammed the truck door, the F-150's engine roaring to life like a wounded animal. He peeled out of the parking lot, gravel spitting under the tires, the PDA crowd's stares burning into his rear view. His phone buzzed, texts from buddies at the shop, already laced with awkward emojis and, "You okay, man?" But one call cut through. Ethan's school principal, voice tight. "Mr. Harlan, we need to talk. Tomorrow morning. This situation has implications for Ethan's well-being." Implications. The word twisted in his gut like a wrench. By the time he pulled into his apartment lot, the dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. The building was a squat brick number wedged between a laundromat and a dive bar called O'Malley's, where neon signs flickered promises of cheap beer and forgotten nights. Jake killed the engine and sat there, forehead pressed to the steering wheel, the leather cool against his fevered skin. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that your love for him is ironclad, but the man you are, the man you've hidden, is suddenly public enemy number one? Upstairs, the apartment smelled of yesterday's takeout pizza and motor oil that never quite washed out of his clothes. He flicked on the lamp, its yellow glow pooling on the worn couch where Ethan usually crashed for movie nights. Tonight, the boy was with Sarah, probably curled up in his old room, bombarded with her version of the truth. Jake poured a tumbler of bourbon, Maker's Mark, the good stuff he saved for birthdays, and sank into the cushions, the burn in his throat a poor substitute for the firestorm in his chest. Sleep evaded him, chased away by replays of the gym. The gasp from Mrs. Delaney, the bake sale queen who'd once slipped him her famous apple pie recipe. The sideways glance from Coach Ramirez, whose locker room banter Jake had always laughed off a little too hard. And Ethan, God, Ethan. His small hand reaching for Jake's during last week's father-son camping trip, whispering, "You're the best dad ever." Now, that innocence was tainted, collateral in a war Jake never wanted to fight. Dawn crept in gray and unforgiving, coffee brewing like a lifeline as he dressed in his Sunday best. A crisp button-down and khakis that felt like a costume. The drive to Willow Creek Elementary was a blur of golden maples shedding leaves like tears, the radio droning NPR stories of distant conflicts that paled against his own. Principal Hargrove's office was a shrine to educational cliches. Finger paintings on the walls, a "Believe in Yourself" poster featuring a cartoon kid high-fiving a bald eagle. Hargrove, a wiry man in his 50s with a mustache that screamed 1970s cop show, steepled his fingers across the desk. "Jake, this is delicate," he began, eyes darting to a file folder stamped confidential. "Sarah's disclosure has stirred things up. Parents are concerned about Ethan's adjustment, about influences in the classroom volunteer rotations." Jake's jaw clenched, knuckles whitening on the armrests. "Influences? You mean me picking him up from chess club? Or helping with the science fair volcano that erupted all over the cafeteria?" Hargrove sighed, adjusting his tie. "It's not personal, but in a town like this, perceptions matter. We've had calls, folks worried about exposure. I need to know, is there any behavior that could affect the children?" The question landed like a sucker punch, Jake's vision tunneling. "Behavior? Christ, Tom. I've been Ethan's dad for a decade. I change his bandages, pack his lunches, teach him how to throw a curveball. My orientation doesn't change that." The principal nodded, but his eyes said otherwise. Pity mixed with that small-town caution, the kind that whispered faggot behind closed doors while smiling at church potlucks. "Of course, but for now, let's limit your involvement. Sarah's primary custody. We'll lean on her." Jake left that office a hollow man, the bell ringing for recess like a death knell. He spotted Ethan on the playground, swinging high on the monkey bars, his laughter carrying on the wind. For a split second, Jake allowed himself to wave, but the boy froze mid-swing, eyes widening in recognition, and something sharper like fear. He dropped to the mulch and bolted inside, leaving Jake adrift in the parking lot, a ghost in his own son's world. The rest of the day blurred into a mechanical haze at the shop. Wrenches slipped from oil-slick hands. Customers' small talk grated like sandpaper. By closing, word had spread. Tires squealed into the lot as Old Man Whitaker, a regular with a '68 Mustang, pulled up, face thunderous. "Heard the news, Harlan. My grandkids come here sometimes. You gonna be, around them? Jake wiped his hands on a rag, the fabric tearing under his grip. Yeah, Bill. I'm the same guy who fixed your carburetor last spring. Nothing's changed. But everything had. That night, alone with a cold dinner and the TV's blue flicker, Jake's phone lit up with Sarah's number. He let it ring, then voicemail. You owe me this, Jake. For the lies, for the family you broke. Ethan's confused, thanks to you. Pickups are off limits now. Deal with it. He hurled the phone across the room, the screen cracking against the wall like his resolve. In the silence that followed, a deeper ache surfaced. Not anger, but grief for the boy he'd lose if he didn't fight. And fight he would, even if it meant dragging his secrets into the light. Little did he know, across the river in Beacon, a stranger was already penning the first line of his unlikely salvation. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, innocuous as junk mail in Jake's battered mailbox. A cream envelope with no return address, postmarked from Manhattan, stamped with a wax seal that looked straight out of a period drama. He nearly tossed it, figuring it for a solicitation from some hedge fund or law firm hawking estate planning for successful entrepreneurs like him. But the weight of it, the fine linen paper peeking through the window, snagged his curiosity. Upstairs, under the harsh fluorescence of his kitchenette, he slid it open with a butter knife, unfolding pages that smelled faintly of sandalwood and old money. Dear Mr. Harlan, I hope this finds you in a moment of quiet amid the storm. My name is Elias Voss. Perhaps you've heard of Voss Industries, the firm behind the waterfront revitalizations in Brooklyn and the green tech startups dotting the Hudson Valley. If not, no matter. What brings me to your door is not commerce, but a shared scar. A month ago, I sat where you sit now, my life appended by a betrayal that stripped me bare before the world I thought I knew. Outed by a colleague in a boardroom coup. My marriage a casualty, my children, 2 daughters, ages 8 and 12. Suddenly adrift in questions I never prepared to answer. The tabloids feasted. The fallout was biblical. But you, Jake Harlan of Willow Creek, are no stranger to this fire. Your story reached me via a mutual acquaintance, a therapist in Poughkeepsie who respects discretion but recognizes kinship. She spoke of a man of quiet strength, a father forging through flames for his son. I see in you the reflection of my own reckoning, and so I extend not pity, but a hand. Enclosed is a check for $250,000. Use it as you see fit, for legal counsel to safeguard your custody, for a fresh start beyond the town's prying eyes, or simply to breathe without the weight of tomorrow's rent. No strings, no repayment. Consider it restitution from one survivor to another. If paths cross, know that New York is vast but not unkind to those who rebuild. There is a coffee shop on the corner of Bleecker and Mott, the Velvet Bean, where men like us find solace in espresso and conversation. Should you venture south, look for the table by the window, the one with the worn copy of Whitman. Until then, hold fast. The dawn follows the darkest hour, not as cliché, but as truth. With unwavering solidarity, Elias Voss. Jake read it twice, then 3 times, the words blurring through a haze of disbelief. The check fluttered to the table, crisp and surreal. $250,000, enough to buy a house, fund a lawyer army, or vanish into the ether. But it was the letter's voice that hooked him. Elegant yet raw, laced with the cadence of a man who'd stared down his own abyss. Elias Voss. Jake had heard the name vaguely from NPR segments on sustainable energy moguls. A titan in tailored suits, outed in some corporate bloodbath. What the hell did a New Yorker want with a grease monkey from nowhere? He paced the linoleum, bourbon bottle whispering temptations from the counter. Part of him screamed scam, fake check, phishing ploy, but the paper's heft, the notary stamp, felt too real. By midnight, he'd Googled Voss on his cracked phone. Photos of a silver fox type in his late 40s, sharp jawline shadowed by stubble, blue eyes piercing from beneath arched brows, attending galas with a poise that screamed old money. No scandals in the headlines, just a quiet resignation from his CEO post 6 weeks back, chalked up to personal reasons. The therapist angle? Dr. Ellis's face flashed. Had she breached confidentiality? Or was this genuine? a lifeline tossed from one drowning man to another. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with boardrooms and playgrounds. Elias's imagined voice narrating Ethan's laughter. Morning brought a custody hearing notice. Sarah pushing for full rights, citing moral instability in her petition. Jake's hands shook as he dialed a lawyer in Kingston. A bulldog named Rita who growled through the line. $250K? That's firepower, Harlan. We fight dirty. The weeks blurred into a gauntlet. Shop talk turned toxic. Customers dwindling. Whispers following him like exhaust fumes. Ethan, shuttled through supervised visits at a neutral park, clung tighter during their hour, questions spilling like marbles. Mom says you're different. Does that mean you don't love her anymore? Or me? Jake's throat closed, hugging the boy against his Carhartt jacket, inhaling the scent of peanut butter and playground dirt. Love's not a switch, buddy. The engine runs on what's true inside. And mine's always revved for you. Sarah's betrayal deepened in layers. At a tense exchange in the McDonald's parking lot, neutral ground per court order, she leaned from her Prius window, lipstick a slash of crimson. This is for Ethan, Jake. You think hiding it made you a hero? It made you a liar. Now everyone's protecting him from your confusion. Her eyes flicked to the rainbow sticker on his truck's bumper, a defiant edition post-outing. And that? Tacky. He bit back the urge to roar, for Ethan's sake. Instead, he funneled the rage into action. The check cleared, Rita's fees swallowed a chunk, but enough remained for a down payment on a modest ranch house on the town's outskirts. Space for Ethan, a yard for Max the dog if Sarah relented. Repairs at the shop ramped up too, courtesy of a Voss referral. A fleet of electric vans from a Brooklyn startup needing tune-ups. But the letter lingered, a talisman on his nightstand. One rainy Saturday, with Ethan at a sleepover and the bourbon untouched, Jake plotted a reconnaissance. The drive to the city was 3 hours of I-87, leaves ablaze in fiery reds and oranges, the Hudson a silver thread below. Manhattan hit like a fever, horns blaring, sidewalks teeming with lives unapologetic in their hustle. The Velvet Bean was a nook in the village, exposed brick and hanging ferns, jazz humming low. He spotted the table immediately. A leather-bound leaves of grass splayed open, steam rising from a double espresso. Elias Voss looked up, and Jake's breath caught. Not from nerves, but the man's presence. Tall, lean, in a cashmere sweater the color of storm clouds, silver threading his dark hair like comet trails. "Mr. Harlan," he said, rising with a smile that crinkled his eyes, hand extended. "Or may I call you Jake? You've come farther than most." They talked for hours, the coffee refills flowing like confessions. Elias shared fragments. A Vermont childhood on a dairy farm, Yale for finance, a loveless marriage to a socialite who'd traded discretion for divorce settlements. The outing, a rival leaking emails to the board, framing him as a distraction. "I lost the empire," Elias admitted, stirring raw sugar into his cup, "but gained my soul. And you? Willow Creek sounds like a pressure cooker." Jake laughed, bitter and real. More like a fault line. Ethan's caught in the quake. He traced the check's ghost in his pocket. "Why me? Why this?" Elias leaned in, voice dropping to a timbre that vibrated through Jake like bass notes. "Because isolation kills us. I had resources, you have heart." And Jake, pause charged as lightning. "There's a poetry in survivors finding each other." The rain eased as they walked Bleecker Street, shoulders brushing in the crowd. Elias pointed out murals, recited Whitman under his breath. "I am large, I contain multitudes." And for the first time since the gym, Jake felt seen. Not as a scandal, but a story unfinished. They parted with a number exchanged, a promise of coffee soon. But as Jake merged onto the highway home, the rearview held not just fading skyline, but a spark, a dangerous, exhilarating what-if. Back in Willow Creek, the ground shifted again. A school board meeting loomed, Sarah rallying allies for a safe environment petition that thinly veiled homophobia. Whispers of protests, boycotts at the shop. Jake steeled himself, Elias's words armor. "Hold fast. But betrayal's shadow lengthened when Rita called. Your ex is digging. Found your therapy notes. She's painting you as unstable. We need character witnesses, Jake. Fast. In the quiet of his new house, unpacking boxes under a bare bulb, Jake stared at the letter, now framed on the mantel. Elias's script a beacon. He dialed, heart pounding. It's Jake. About that poetry. Mind if I borrow some courage? The school board meeting packed Willow Creek High's auditorium to the rafters, metal chairs scraping like accusations under fluorescent buzz. Jake arrived early, Rita at his elbow in a power suit that screamed litigation, her briefcase a shield. The air hummed with tension. Neighbors he'd waved to for years now averting eyes, clusters of parents murmuring behind programs emblazoned with "Protect our kids." Sarah held court near the front, auburn hair pinned in righteous resolve, flanked by Whitaker and a gaggle of PDA enforcers. Ethan was home with a sitter, spared the circus, but his absence gnawed at Jake like a loose tooth. Principal Hargrove called order, gavel sharp as a judge's. We're here to discuss volunteer policies in light of recent events. All voices welcome, but civility first. The room tittered, nerves frayed. Sarah rose first, voice honeyed venom. As Ethan's mother, I speak for stability. Jake's revelation, while personal, raises concerns. Children mimic what they see. We can't risk confusion in our halls. Murmurs swelled, nods rippling like wheat in wind. Jake's palms slicked, Rita's hand on his arm a grounding wire. Then Whitaker lumbered up, face ruddy. Harlan's a fine mechanic, but this lifestyle? My grandkids need role models, not experiments. The word landed like a slap, Jake's blood roaring. Rita shot up. Objection, counsel speaking. This is defamation wrapped in concern. My client is a devoted father, vetted by courts. His orientation is irrelevant to his character. But the tide turned uglier. A pastor from First Methodist invoking Leviticus in veiled terms. A mom tearfully recounting stories from the city about recruiting. Jake's chest tightened, the room shrinking to a vice. He stood, voice steady despite the quake inside. I fixed your cars, coached your son's little league, shoveled your walks after blizzards. I'm the same Jake Harlan. Being gay, that's not a phase or a threat. It's me. And Ethan? He's my North Star. Deny me him, and you deny a boy his dad. Silence, then applause, scattered, from the back, where a young teacher and a couple of shop regulars nodded. But Sarah's rebuttal sliced deeper. Lies erode trust, Jake. You hid for years. How can we trust now? She held up a sheaf of papers, therapy transcripts, redacted but damning in her spin. Unstable, the notes say, for Ethan's sake. The door banged open then, a figure striding down the aisle like a scene from a Scorsese flick. Elias Voss, cashmere overcoat draped on broad shoulders, exuding the quiet command of boardrooms. Heads turned, whispers hissing. Who the hell? He reached the podium uninvited, Hargrove sputtering. Sir, this is Elias Voss, he interjected, voice resonant, eyes locking on Sarah with steel calm. Investor in this district's edtech programs, and friend to Mr. Harlan. He laid a folder on the lectern, thick with affidavits. I've reviewed the claims. Baseless. Jake's stability? Ironclad, vouched by professionals, including Dr. Ellis, who confirms his therapy was proactive, not pathological. Gasps rippled. Sarah blanched, papers wilting in her grip. Elias continued, unflinching. I know outings sting, mine was public, corporate. It doesn't define us. It refines us. Deny Jake and you teach Ethan intolerance over love. That's the real instability. The room fractured, claps warring with boos, Hargrove adjourning in chaos. Outside, under sodium lamps, Jake cornered Elias by the flagpole. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Elias's smile was weary, victorious. Besides, your courage? Contagious. They drove separately to O'Malley's, the Dives jukebox crooning Springsteen as they claimed a corner booth. Beers arrived frosty, the foam a brief reprieve. Elias shed his coat, revealing forearms corded from rock-climbing weekends in the gunks. Unexpected for a suit. The folder? My people dug. Sarah's petition's weak, emotional, not evidentiary. Rita's got ammo now. Jake exhaled, shoulders unknotting. You're a force of nature, Voss. Why risk the splash in our pond? Elias's gaze softened, tracing Jake's face like a map. Because seeing you stand? It reminded me why I fight. And Jake. He reached across, fingers brushing knuckles. A touch electric, innocent yet laden. You're worth the dive. The flirtation simmered subtle over darts and tails. Elias's first crush on a debate club rival at prep school. Jake's stolen glances at the farmhand who'd taught him to mend fences. Laughter bridged gaps, vulnerability the mortar. By last call, the bar empty save for the bartender's knowing wink, Elias walked Jake to his truck. Rain slicked the lot, headlights pooling gold. Stay in the city sometime, Elias murmured. Closer now, breath mingling. Let me show you the rooftops, the real New York. Jake's pulse thrummed, the pull magnetic. Tempting, but Ethan's my anchor. Anchors don't chain, they steady. Elias's hand lingered on the door, thumb grazing Jake's wrist. The kiss, if it happened, hovered unspoken, a promise in the downpour. Back home, the high crashed. Sarah's midnight text. Who was that suit? Buying your way in? Ethan scared, your friend, just made it worse. Betrayal's knife twisted anew. Had she tailed him? Jake fired back. He's a witness to truth. Unlike you. But dawn brought worse. A schoolyard scuffle. Ethan shoved by a classmate chanting, Fairy Daddy. His backpack slashed. The boy sobbed into Jake's shirt during pickup, bruises blooming on his ego more than skin. Why do they hate us, Dad? They don't hate us. Jake lied softly, cradling him. They fear different, but we'll show 'em strong. The climax brewed in court, Rita's motion for joint custody bolstered by Elias's sworn statement. Sarah countered viciously, subpoenaing Jake's ex-colleagues for inappropriate anecdotes. None substantiated, but the smear stuck. Whispers escalated to threats. Tires slashed at the shop, graffiti on his door. Go back to the city, queer. Elias called daily, voice a bomb. Higher security. Or come here, I've space. Pride held Jake rooted, but fear eroded it. One night, post-hearing where the judge reserved ruling, he drove to the riverbank, bottle in hand, stars wheeling overhead. Elias found him there. GPS shared in vulnerability's wake. Sitting on the tailgate, silhouette etched against the water. Couldn't sleep, Elias said, joining him hip to hip. Thought you might need company. They sat in companionable quiet, the current's lap a lullaby. Jake's confession spilled. The terror of losing Ethan, the guilt of loving Elias's light in the dark. You're rewriting my fate. But what if it's just a loan? What if I can't pay back? Elias turned, face illuminated by moonlight, earnest. Love's not debt, Jake. It's equity built together. His hand cupped Jake's jaw, thumb tracing stubble, and this time, the kiss ignited. Soft, searching, tasting of salt and salvation. No frenzy, just depth. A romantic unraveling under the indifferent sky. But betrayal's specter loomed. The next day, as Jake prepped for the final hearing, Rita's call shattered. Sarah's got a PI. Photos from the bar, the river. She's alleging endangerment, moral corruption. Jake's world tilted, Elias's kiss now a weapon. Had passion blinded him to the town's long shadow? In the courthouse lobby, facing Sarah's triumphant glare, he realized the real storm wasn't out there. It was the fracture between love's promise and loss's grip. The courtroom in Kingston smelled of polished oak and stale coffee, sunlight slanting through high windows like judgmental fingers. Jake sat ramrod straight beside Rita, his tie a noose, Ethan's future balanced on affidavits and alibis. Sarah occupied the opposite bench, composed in pearls and pencil skirt. Her lawyer a slick Albany import with a briefcase full of venom. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patel with salt and pepper hair and eyes like laser sights, scanned the docket. Harlan versus Harlan. Custody modification. Let's keep it civil, counsel. Rita opened strong. Character witnesses from the shop. Dr. Ellis affirming Jake's fitness. Elias's deposition a cornerstone. Mr. Harlan's integrity is unimpeachable. His bond with Ethan unbreakable. Gasps when the check's origin surfaced. Not bribery, but benevolence. Voss Industries' charitable arm documented in SEC filings. But Sarah's counsel pounced, flashing blown-up photos. Jake and Elias at O'Malley's, shoulders touching. The riverbank silhouette, unmistakable intimacy. Exhibit B, evidence of reckless exposure. Mr. Harlan's friendship endangers the child, public displays in a conservative community. The gallery murmured, Sarah dabbing crocodile tears. Jake's stomach churned. That kiss, born of solace, now porn for the prurient. Rita objected. Irrelevant to parenting. But Patel allowed it, brow furrowed. Context matters, Ms. Vasquez. Proceed. Sarah took the stand, voice quivering artifice. I fought for our family, Your Honor. Jake's lies poisoned it, hiding his proclivities until Ethan was old enough to remember the fallout. Now this Voss man, a rich enabler, pulling strings. Ethan's having nightmares, lashing out at school. I beg for protection. Cross-examination cracked her facade. Rita grilling on the outing, the therapy breach. You call it protection? Sounds like revenge. Sarah faltered. He owed the truth, but the seed of doubt flowered, her possessiveness, not piety, the root. Jake's turn came like a confessional. Under oath, he faced Patel's gaze. I hid because I feared this, losing him. But Ethan's not collateral. He's my why. Gay or straight, I'm his dad. The one who builds forts from couch cushions, explains why the Yankees suck since '09, holds him when monsters lurk. Elias? He's a friend who saw my fight and amplified it. That night by the river, we talked for hours. The photo? A hug. Nothing more than what any dad needs after a beating. He paused, voice cracking. I betrayed no one but myself for years. Sarah's anger, I get it. But weaponizing it against Ethan? That's the real harm. Patel adjourned for deliberation. The drive home a funeral procession. Elias waited on the porch of the new house, thermos of coffee steaming. You were magnificent, he said, pulling Jake into an embrace, chaste, steady. Truth has a ring, even in legalese. They cooked spaghetti in the galley kitchen, Elias chopping garlic with surgeon's precision, Jake stirring sauce, the domesticity a bomb. Over candlelight, Elias's touch, beeswax from a Soho market. They dissected the day, laughter punctuating fears. If I lose, Jake whispered, fork midway. Promise you'll be the cool uncle? Teach him stocks or poetry? Elias's eyes darkened, hand covering Jake's. You won't lose, but if the winds shift, we'll weather it, together. New York, Willow Creek, doesn't matter. Us. The call came at dusk. Patel's ruling via Rita's glee. Joint custody, primary to Jake with overnights. Sarah's visitation supervised pending counseling. The photos? Judge called them speculative sensationalism. Your testimony sealed it human, not scripted. Jake hooped, scooping Elias into a spin, the kitchen echoing joy. Ethan arrived an hour later, dropped by a sullen Sarah, his duffel thumping the steps. Dad, can we build that treehouse now? Mom said maybe, but you promised. Jake knelt, Hazel meeting Hazel. Absolutely, bud. With lasers and trapdoors. Sarah lingered at the curb, Prius idling. No words, just a nod, defeat yielding to dawn. As she drove off, Jake felt the betrayal scar. Not festering but fading. A reminder of resilience. Months wove into seasons. The shop thrived, Voss contracts a boon. Elias became fixture. Weekend hikes in the Catskills, where Ethan dubbed him Uncle Eli after a fly fishing lesson that hooked more than trout. Romance bloomed slow, romantic. Stolen glances over breakfast, hands clasped under diner tables. A first real date in Manhattan. Rooftop jazz under stars, Elias reciting Whitman as skyline glittered. No rush, No closets. Just two men, scarred and whole, building something humanistic. Love as partnership, not possession. One spring evening, treehouse complete with rope ladder and Ethan's telescope, the three sprawled on the new deck, fireflies dancing like errant thoughts. Ethan yawned. Dad, Uncle Eli, your stories are better than Mom's. Even the sad ones end happy. Jake met Elias's gaze over the boy's head. A smile shared. Yeah, kiddo, they do. In Willow Creek's gentle fold, fate rewritten not by fortune alone, but by the quiet revolution of truths told, hands held, and hearts mended. Jake Harlan, once outed in ashes, rose phoenix-like. Not unscathed, but unbowed, his story a testament. Love, in all its forms, outlasts the storms that seek to break it.